Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Battle Buddy Podcast. Got a great guest on today. He is a member of the Entrepreneur Tribe, a fellow Warrior Council member, and today we're going to talk about God and coffee and entrepreneurship and for his business and his efforts. All those are all combined in a nice little package. So without further ado, we go into the intro, and I'm going to introduce my awesome guest for today.
Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Jose, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on here, talk about some stuff near and dear to your heart here. Go ahead and introduce yourself and what you got going on. What's your military story?
All right, Keith. First off, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. I love telling people about my story. I graduated high school, a Catholic high school. I went to Catholic military school from kindergarten till I graduated high school. The last 2 years of high school I wasn't in the ROTC program, but I still got the credit to make E2 out of boot camp. I joined the Navy in 1989. I did the delayed entry program. I was actually trying to go Air Force because my dad and my uncle were Air Force. They were both crypto techs. Dad did a lot of CI work, counterintelligence work overseas. And my uncle was in Vietnam. He was actually, I don't know much about what he did. All I know is that he was in Laos. And anybody who's ever done any research on Vietnam knows what Laos was all about. So
A lot of secret mouth stuff he can't talk about.
yeah, he told me that he'll never, ever, ever talk to me about what went on over there. So anyway, I was going to go Air Force. I wanted to be just like them. They're my heroes. My dad definitely was my hero till he died, and my uncle is still my hero. And so that year in 1989, when I graduated high school, the Air Force had a freeze on recruiting. And so the guy told me, just come every Friday, and whenever this thing clears up, we'll get you going. So I did the delayed entry thing, where you swear in, then you swear in a second time. And waiting, I'd go every Friday. This one Friday I went, and at the time in San Antonio, all the branches, all four of them,
It's a while ago, right?
I'm not picking on the coasties, but I am. All four branches were in one building. All the main recruiting stations were all in one building. And so I would walk past, the Army and the Marines and the Navy every day to get to the Air Force guy on Fridays. I would check in once a week on Friday. And this one Friday I went, and the lights were out. There was a sign there, we're closed. And I turned around to walk out, and there's this old crusty Navy guy sitting in the doorway inside the building smoking a cigarette. And he goes, we offer everything the Air Force does. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I was out of a job, and I didn't have any money. I'd already ran out of money. I've been to school for one semester, waiting for the Air Force to get squared away. And I walked in there. We started talking about electronics and stuff like that I wanted to do. And then I had to go home and face my dad and my uncle and tell them that I joined the Navy.
Tell them that you're a traitor.
Yeah, they were mad. And so
It's understandable,
Yeah, well, and they both had great careers in the Air Force, but Dad was in for a short time. But it's a funny thing. After Dad died, I've got his service jacket, and Dad kept pretty good records. And we were trying to figure, because we've heard all these crazy stories about my dad and what he did. And so, I don't know if did you ever see that movie with Tom Hanks, Bridge of Spies? Something like that, Bridge of Lies. So. It's about I guess when they shot down the U-2 in Russia.
No, I don't think I've seen that. Surprisingly, because I think I've seen every Tom Hanks movie out there that I'm aware of. So,
well, they do this thing where the CIA comes into this barracks where these Air Force guys are, and they're like, you and you come with me, and they're like, but we're in the Air Force, not anymore. Now you're working for us. And it was the CIA. And so we used to joke around all the time that my dad did do all kinds of weird stuff. I've got all kinds of crazy stories, but when I got his records and I was going through all this stuff, I realized there was a 2-year gap from what his service record says that he exited the military and when he got home. I even have the train ticket that he took to the port to get on a boat to come home. and I have all that information, like when he left the country, but there's like a 2-year gap, and there's nothing on him, zero.
I think you
And
could explain maybe a couple of weeks, maybe
yeah,
a month, but 2 years is a little difficult to explain.
yeah, it's
Where do you go for 2 years? What are you doing there? Yeah, maybe he was doing some secret squirrel stuff.
I mean, he had to be doing something for the for the government. I don't know what he was doing, but
Who
yeah,
knows?
I grew up not knowing that. That just like fed my, I guess the passion I have for my father's service and my uncle's service. And but growing up, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be like my dad and my uncle. I didn't care about how I was going to do it or what I was going to do or what I was what I was got to go through. That's all what I wanted to do. And so when I graduated high school, there was no I didn't have a doubt in my mind what I was going to do. And so
That's interesting. It's funny how that plays out for some people, because some people have that, like they're set. My cousin was in the Marines, and I think from like age 8, like I'm gonna be a Marine, like hands down, gonna be a Marine. He did security forces, then infantry, and he did it. Growing up, I mean, I had those thoughts as a kid, but I never really thought it was a reality that I was ever gonna serve. And it wasn't until like I had gotten my associate's degree, I was like working a job at Kohl's, and I'm like, I'm tired of working in the shoe department and unloading trucks. There's got to be something else. I had an associate's in law enforcement, and I was like, I don't really want to be a cop. I need some experience. Like, it just seems scary to jump into the real adult world and do something grown up. And so I'm like, oh, well, I'll just join the Air Force. Why not? I mean, the Army called me first, and they almost had me a helicopter pilot until I found out I had no depth perception. And so the long story short for me, it was Air Force, kind of out of boredom and do something else and grow up and go do something. So I think it's funny how everybody falls in one of those. Like, they either end up in the military by some weird chance, or they've just had to, their goal. Like, it's going to happen. It's their destiny one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. I never had a doubt, man. I knew exactly what I was going to do when I graduated. I didn't think I was going to go in the Navy. I thought I was going to go Air Force. But I really enjoyed my time, and I know you guys saw a few weeks ago, I was in Florida with 2 of my brothers that I hadn't seen in 30 years. And that was a pretty moving week, to hang out with those guys. And it was like we'd never been separated. It was like we had never missed a single day. And I know something that civilians, they can't wrap their head around that. They don't understand that, but
I don't think anybody in the civilian world works with somebody so closely for so many hours in kind of boredom sometimes. You have no choice but to talk, and you just know it's weird because you know each other deeply, but you really don't know each other. It's kind of weird sometimes, like in the military, like you know each other so well, but at the same time, you really don't know that much about that person. But I mean, I've been out for almost 10 years, and I have not had that experience where I've gone and hooked up with one of my battle buddies I served with, but I've talked to a few of them on the phone, and it's even through phone conversation, it's like that love and that respect for each other, and the deep caring, like, hey, we're here for each other still. Like, you just kind of pick up that conversation. I can only imagine 30 years, and meeting up in person. That's got to be crazy. I think everybody should do that as frequently as they can, find a way to get together.
And the one guy, Scott, John and I hadn't reconnected until probably, I don't know how long ago it was. I want to say it's probably when somebody built a site for our ship. Is probably when I reconnected with John. But Scott, I've never really lost contact with Scott. Ever since I got out of the service in 1995.
Nice way to clarify that.
I know, right? I just saw somebody, I watched The Green Arrow, and I was looking up some of the characters, and one of the actors in the show, they're born in 1992, and I'm like, oh my God, I was floating the Caribbean in 1992, But Scott and I have always kept in touch, and so when 9/11 was going on, all that stuff was going on, I had people that I had trained, people that I had worked with, like, hey, Petty Officer Alaniz, what are we doing, man? What are you going to do? And I'm like, man, get down to recruiting station. They need people they don't have to train. And I said, you just go. Where are you going to be? I said, don't worry about it. I'll be somewhere, man. I'll catch y'all up. And but I was 400 pounds when 9/11 hit. So I wasn't going anywhere but to the fridge and the kitchen 4 or 5 times a day, And so that's a demon, I guess, for lack of better words. That's a demon that I have fought, all of my life since I got out of the service. And Scott always kept me in the loop with what was going on. He always made me feel like I was still part of that mission. Even when he trained up for this last one, I've got stuff on my phone that nobody will ever see, just because, he was just keeping me involved, and so it was a very moving, experience for me, because, I never really thought about doing that. And the reason we had talked about doing a get together is that John's birthday is March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, which was my dad's birthday. And so we always talked about, doing something on St. Patrick's Day. And when Scott found out he was getting deployed, we all decided that when he got back, we were all going to go to Dublin for St. Patrick's Day. And we were going to spend it over there in Ireland. And so, of course, COVID came.
I was going to say, I knew COVID had to sneak its head in there somewhere. That changed the plan.
Enjoyed that, but Scott got back right before Thanksgiving. And I said, well, listen, I'm going to go, when you get home. He goes, well, just wait a little bit, and I'm like, okay. And so he had to reacclimate. He was having a little bit of trouble, transitioning back to normal everyday life. And so, he and I talked about it quite a bit, and we planned it out, and I went, and it was a great thing, because those bonds are not easy to find. They're really not. People say these guys are closer than some of my family is, and I don't know if you've experienced that yourself, but yeah, it's pretty amazing.
There's a lot of people I look back on that I, a lot of fond memories serving with. A lot of them I would put in definitely, close friends, but there's a handful of people for various reasons, whether I worked with them or we were in the same locations, experienced kind of same things. Like, it just goes deeper. Like, it's kind of hard to explain. I know probably anybody watching knows exactly what we're talking about, but it's just deeper. Like, you just do anything to have each other's back. And, one of the guys, I just talked to him, last fall after his wife, tragically passed away from COVID, and, picked up that conversation, and, him and I were talking about all kinds of things, and he, even though I was calling to check on him, he was pointing me in the right direction to go do this, go do that, take care of yourself too, and hell, that's the whole battle buddy mentality, right? Like, how ironic is I call to check up on him, see how he's doing after something, and he turns right around and gives me advice and sets me on the right path. So it's crazy, that's that love, like, for lack of a better term, I guess. That love and respect we have for each other.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's, there's so few of us. If you really look at the numbers globally, the amount of people that serve their country, whether it's the United States or Britain, Australia, I don't really care about anybody else, but if you look at the number of people in those places in the population, everybody says it's 3%, but it's probably closer to 1%. I think probably 1% is a little more accurate. And so that really, makes a small, tight-knit community.
And I think we have to, as a coping mechanism sometimes, like, nobody really understands us but us. I mean, I'm Air Force, you're Navy. We served in different periods. We saw and did different things, but, like, there's so many commonalities between us, the things we experience. Navy boot camp is different than Air Force.
Yeah. Well, I mean, y'all have weekends off.
I don't know about that, but I did go through when it was 6.5 weeks. So them poor suckers doing 8.5 right now, man. I feel sorry for them. No, shit. I could go on for days about boot camp, man. That was a cakewalk. I ended up as laundry chief. I spent most of my days off the drill pad doing laundry. That's like the hidden gem in my opinion, man. I did laundry all the time. I skipped out on probably half the drill. I had to go to the classes. Never really skipped out of PT, but being off the drill pad and kind of taking some weekends and stuff, being down there kind of isolated, where nobody's really looking for you because you're just kind of doing your job. There was a master sergeant pop his head in every now and then. He liked to sneak up on his tiptoes, man, so you wouldn't hear the clickers on the bottom of his boots. He was a ninja, I swear. But no, it was easy for me. Like it didn't bother me. But
Yeah, ours was 8 weeks. It wasn't bad. It was.
It's not as bad, I think.
Was more intense because it was a 2-year electronics basic electrical and electronics, and then advanced electronics course that was 2 years condensed to 6 months.
No.
And so that was where all the intensity and all the there wasn't no screwing around. I mean, and you were kind of on your own a little bit. You were still in barracks, but you were pretty much, after school you could go do what you wanted. There were guys that got drunk every night, came in at 2:00 in the morning, went back to school at 6:30. It's like, nope. And so
I know a few guys like that. I may or may not have been one of them occasionally. I mean, my tech school is kind of like that too. It was like, because I was right there at Lackland for basic training, and then my tech school right there for security forces. And the tough part for me, I mean, it was hot. I mean, I was doing tech school. We were out at Camp Bullis, running up and down the mountains with no shade, or the hills, I guess.
Yeah.
Just with no shade. I mean, you're right down in that area, like all the cactuses and the big giant spiders, man. I was not a fan. I mean, I love Texas. It's God's country. I'd move down there, but some of the creatures down there, man, just ain't normal. I came face to face with this spider doing land navigation. I turn around this corner and this sucker's like right here next to my face. This big old like yellow orange thing. And I'm not the kind of person that has a problem with spiders. I don't have a phobia, but I was like, no way, no, backing up.
Big as my face.
Yeah, so I'm doing the pace count. The guy behind me's got the compass, and he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Back up, dude, back up." I don't know if this thing jumps or not. This thing's ridiculous.
It's always the little bitty ones down here you got to worry about. The little
dude, this thing was
black widows and the brown recluse. Everything else is
I don't know. It's pretty intimidating when the thing's like size of your hand, right? It's like right there in your face, and I don't know if this thing jumps or not, man.
Banana spider.
Yeah,
and they're huge. They get as big as your face almost, with their legs stick out and everything, and you're walking around and you're like, oh. But they keep the mosquito population down, and of course you were in Texas, so you know how bad the mosquitoes get. I tell you what, though, I'm really surprised. It had to be the fact that we had such a hard freeze this year, late in February, because we're usually not used to getting that kind of a freeze in February.
I think that's an understatement of the year. A hard freeze. I think you had a little bit more than a hard freeze.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we had like a freaking Arctic freeze.
Yeah, Mother Nature was like, screw you guys. I got something special for you.
It was bad, man. And, people, I talked to Paul the other day. He's from New York, and some other people, and they're like, oh, you bunch of wimps. And I'm like, look, man, you got to understand, first off, we're not used to that kind of crap. Y'all get that stuff every year. You're used to shoveling 5 feet of snow out of your front, walkway every day. We're not. We rarely get it. And then the houses are built to a different code up north than they are down here. And so, we're not like, I don't even have, I don't know, this won't make sense to anybody but air conditioning guys, but, most of your new air conditioning units, if they're electric, they have 3 strips in them. Okay. And so they have 3 different stages. So the first stage, if it's just cool, whatever, it kicks on, wherever you have your set points, the second one, the third one. Well, most of the ones down here, they have 1 strip, Now mine's got 3 because that's what I did for the longest time, HVAC. So I went out and I hunted the unit that I wanted in my house, and it's got 3 strips in it. And let me tell you, during those rolling blackouts, all 3 strips were on. But other older houses, they only got 1 when the power would come back on. Well, that 1 strip is like blowing, 100% as hot as it can possibly get, because it can't keep up. And so, and that was also some things too. I've been reading a lot about the company that, everybody quit that place or got fired from that ERCOT Energy. Texas is so big, we have our own grid, right?
I know that was the craziest thing to think of after all
Yeah.
that happened and reading about it.
Yeah.
But Texas is big.
We have our own grid compared to, there's like a whole grid for like, all these states on the East Coast and the West Coast and the Midwest, but we have our own grid. And again, we're talking about how big Texas is. And so, but I've been reading a lot of stuff about that. They got all this money. They were supposed to do upgrades to the equipment and all that stuff that they didn't do. So they weren't prepared for it. But again, we're not set up for that down here. That's not on anybody's mind. Nobody ever thinks, oh, it's going to get so cold here that people are actually going to run their heat, and, me and my wife rarely run the heat. I mean, the house, I think our set point is like 63 or something like that, in the house, where most people will set them at like 65, 68. And ours, we'll let it go to 60 sometimes. Now, this time it got down to like 48 in the house. So
yeah, that's chilly.
that's pretty
That's
cold.
throwing on every layer you can find in the
Walking
closet,
around the
right?
house, you can see your breath inside the house. It's pretty bad.
Knowing where you're at too. I bet you don't have that many hoodies, right?
No, a lot of shorts and polos, man. I mean, that's
See, I got a whole bin in my other room full of cold weather gear, man. I'm set, but I'm up in Illinois, so. But
I still have my cold weather gear. Some of it from the military, some of it from one of my brothers who was in Afghanistan. He gave me all of his cold weather gear, his BPAC, and so I've got the boots and the insulated boots and the base layer, and I've got the the sweaters and all that stuff. So I have all that gear, but
I've got one piece that I've only worn like 3 times, I think. When I was in, they sent us up on an operational readiness exercise or something. They sent us all the way up to Alpena, Michigan. From what I understand, damn near in Canada. We're almost I think it was a guard base or reserve base up there, but it was so bitterly cold. They set us up there with the training chem gear because it was an exercise, but they also sent us with like that big jacket, like with the fleece and the feathers in it and the fur on the thing. I never wore that. Most of the time, because we were normally in the exercise wearing chem gear, which is funny because they're like, you can take your chem gear off now. And we're like, nah, we're good. It's an extra layer of warmth. We'll just hang out in it for the rest of the day. But I still got that thing. I've had to break it out a couple of times up here where it's just got really cold. And I'm like, I may look a little weird running around with this whole thing on, but keeps me warm. Better get frostbite. So it's no surprise that Texas has their own grid because I think Texas has everything of their own barbecue, their own culture. I mean, Texas pretty much has its own of everything.
Yeah.
And it's home to the only mesquite coffee, right?
Yeah, man. I've Googled it many times. I have found other coffees that are hardwood roasted, but they're not roasted the way ours is. And I've not found a place that does mesquite, but they could be out there. I don't know. I haven't found them.
Well, there's only one to try.
There's only one that really
If you
matters.
can find another one, that's fine. But there's only one to try.
There's only one that really matters.
Only one that matters. Only one to try. I'll be honest. You're with your coffee. I was like, oh, mesquite. That's interesting. I think everybody has that thought. Like, okay, I got to try it. I'm a little nervous because I'm a coffee drinker, but I'm a black coffee drinker, which probably helps because I don't know that a bunch of cream and sugar would taste all that good in it.
Wow.
But the first time I tried it, I was like, how do I put this? Like a very surprise taste bud shock in some way. So I'm like, okay, it's coffee. It's smooth. It's got this different flavor. And I'm immediately thinking like, man, I need some bacon and eggs and some pancakes with this. It was like, this is not something you put creamer or a bunch of sugar in. You drink this black. It's smooth, pick your flavor, or your dark level that you like, whether you like light roast or dark roast, whatever. But it is one of those things like, give me a big old plate of pancakes and bacon and eggs and a nice old hot cup of your coffee, man. Just
We are definitely
amazing.
trying to do some different things. One of the things that because I didn't know much about coffee when I didn't know that I was ever going to do coffee. I knew that I wanted the same kind of coffee. In 2014, my grandson was born in New Zealand, and so Connie and I went over there for a month. And one weekend we went to Sydney because that's like on my bucket list, and it was like $300 for both of us round trip. I'm like, we're going to Sydney.
Hey, you're already there. You might as well spend that money. Oh,
It was
I'd do the same thing.
$300. I'm like, we're going, and it's actually less than $300. That's $300 New Zealand. So it was actually like maybe I don't know 220 or something like that for both of us. And so anyway, we went to Sydney for the weekend, and everybody takes a picture in that famous opera house, right, with the little clamshell looking opera house with the right there on the water with the gate, the big bridge behind it, the big suspension bridge.
I think that's the only thing in Sydney I could recognize in a picture.
Yeah,
Because everybody takes that picture there.
yeah. And so we were the first day. I think Connie was going to try to rip my throat out because we rented a car, and 4 hours later we finally got to the hotel that was like 5 miles away. It was horrible, absolutely horrible driving there. People are absolutely out of their frigging minds, and they don't let you in, and it was miserable. And so we were going to go to a vineyard before we went to check in, and we never got out of the city. We never even got across the bay. And so we were trying to get to the hotel and we couldn't get there. And then we finally did, and we had to park, and everything's underground because there's no place. There's so many people in Sydney. And so we went to an underground parking garage, $75 for 30 minutes.
Holy,
Yeah.
wow.
And then we checked into the hotel, and they said, "Oh no, we have a parking lot, and since it's after 5, you'll get that discount rate." Well, the discount rate for one night was $150 because they don't have any place to park, man. I mean, like at all. There's so many people. People are like on top of each other, so Sydney either goes up or it goes underground. And so anyway, we decided that was not the way we were going to get around Sydney. And then we found out. We looked online. There was a place where we could return the car at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And so we loaded our backpacks. We took off before traffic even started. And we drove 16 blocks straight down the road that we were on to this place, and we dropped the car off. And then we backpacked all day. And it was amazing. And so we had breakfast here and we walked around. And, a lot of people don't know this, but Australia, by the end of the traditional British Empire, was the largest. What do you call it? The largest. It's not called
Commonwealth?
colony, but it's
Like a Commonwealth or territory or something like that.
Prison colony. By the time that the British Empire was starting to wind down, they were the largest prison colony in the British Empire. The largest one was actually the United States until we, fought them, killed them, and kicked them out. But we were actually the largest one. So anyway, there's a place there, Hyde Park, where they would bring the prisoners, and they've turned it into it's a museum that you can go into. Horrible. I mean, the historical part of it is just disgusting. But they have this little restaurant out, and so we were out there, and there's cockatoos everywhere. The big green parrots, the big huge ones. They're just all over the place. They're like
So that's Australia's version of seagulls.
Yeah, exactly. They're like I don't know, morning doves. They're everywhere. And so we're sitting there eating, and then we wanted to go walk down there on the shorefront and take a picture in front of the deal. And we had been backpacking most of the morning by this point. And I said, I want a coffee. I want to get some coffee. I'm tired. We're going to be another 6 hours before it gets dark. And so we're walking down the sidewalk, and on the right-hand side, there's this little, literally plywood shack. It was built with 4x8 sheets of plywood. And it had it was a little bit, it had 2 sheets. So it was like 8 feet wide and 4 feet wide, deep or whatever. And that was it. It was just 5 or 6 sheets of plywood they built it with. And there's a little guy in there selling coffee. And I'm like, well, hey, man, it can't be any worse than. We had already been in New Zealand for a week, and my kids drank instant. And so I was disgusted with it. I was like,
Oh, wow.
I'm in Europe. How can
What?
is this the best coffee they have? Well, we found out later that my kids didn't really venture away from the house at all. So anyway, there's a shack, and I'm like, well, the coffee can't be any worse than what I'm drinking at my kid's house. And it was the most amazing coffee I'd ever had in my life. And I was like, man, what do you do with your coffee? This is like the best cup of coffee I've ever had. He's like, oh, nothing. We just, they roast. There's like 9 roasteries in Sydney, and they all roast on Wednesday. And so we go get coffee on Thursday. And here you are Saturday, it's a couple of days old, and I don't grind it until you order it. And so that was the first time that I had ever really had fresh roasted, made to order coffee. And then we went back to New Zealand, and I said, surely they have coffee here, because there's no way that, they don't have coffee.
Something better than instant, right?
So my wife and I went into town one day without the kids, just walking around through downtown Hamilton, New Zealand. And sure enough, we found a little coffee dive, and I was like, oh my God, this is the ticket. So when we got home, I tried to, at first I was buying coffee. I would buy coffee and my daughter would send it to me, or my wife would go over and she'd bring back for a couple of years. And then in 2017, we went to Italy and Greece. When I came back from that trip, same thing, awesome coffee. You could go to a little shoebox of a business and the coffee was awesome because they got it fresh roasted weekly, and they didn't grind it till you ordered it. And there's this whole culture. And so when I came home, I was trying to find a way to replicate that coffee, because I buying it from Danielle and having her ship it, shipping from New Zealand was like $60. It just wasn't worth it. And so I kept trying to find different ways to replicate it, different ways. And that process of trying to find coffee, make coffee the way I wanted it, came about in a very bizarre manner. A lady at church said, why don't you just roast your own? And I'm like, how am I going to roast my own coffee?
Yeah, how do you do that? Like, especially if you don't know anything about it. Like, I just want a good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
How the heck do I roast it? Like, what? Yeah. And I have not heard your story about how you, kind of came up with mesquite, or where that came about. So I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah. So this lady from church, she said, I've got a roaster. I'll bring it to you. And I'm like, what? You can bring me something that I can roast coffee in? And so her name's Carrie Evans. And she had this little electric countertop iRoast. And it does about 4 ounces at a time. And then she said, like, if you really like the strong coffees, get online, look up raw coffee, and try to stick with the African blends and Ethiopian, Rwanda, and stuff like that. And so Amazon, right? Well, I don't know nothing about coffee, so Amazon. And Amazon's got some raw coffee. And so I did some of that. And then I found a place called Coffee Bean Corral. They're all really, I don't use any of them. I use Coffee Bean Corral every once in a while now because they're all just so overpriced. But I was making coffee. It was better than what I could get anywhere around, especially at that SB place that we don't mention their name, but that huge, crazy chain, national chain. And I'm not talking about the veteran-owned one.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. I am not a fan. It's too much for me. And so, I'm not talking price. It's just like not only the flavor to me.
Yeah, not only is it expensive, but a lot of their coffee's over roasted. And that's something I had to learn too. Most coffees in the States that you buy from these big companies are over roasted. And so I'll get to that in a minute, but I started roasting with that thing, and it was, first off, it wasn't enough coffee. I wanted to make more coffee, right? And so, but I wasn't going to do that until I came up with a coffee that I enjoyed. And so I found some really, strong Ethiopian coffee that I liked that was pretty okay. And, South Texas, I grew up grilling on mesquite. We would go spend, a week at the ranch with my grandfather, and we would go, get mesquite from the from the brush, and he cooked all weekend on it, And so I grew up loving mesquite, the way it smells, the way the food's, it flavors the food. And I was outside one day, I was grilling steaks. I have a little, I don't know, it's a little 2 foot by 2 foot steak grill that I bought, and it's just an open flame. You build your fire, you put the grate on top of it, and you do your steaks direct heat. And so I was sitting there making steaks, and I go, man, I wonder what coffee would taste like with mesquite on it, And so I'm out there grilling steaks, and I'm on Amazon, and I bought this little 4-ounce stainless steel cage, and I bought a rotisserie that it fit on. I bought the little rotisserie motor, and so I hooked all this stuff up to this little steak grill. And a couple of 4 or 5 days later, I was out there roasting coffee beans over mesquite. And so there was a lot of trial. It took a lot of trial and error.
I'm sure you're pretty nervous before that, taking that first cup, right?
Yeah,
Like, this is either going to be okay or good, or it's going to taste like crap.
Yeah, and I didn't know there were different grinds. I didn't know how to get the most out of the coffee. And so anyway,
learning process. We've actually got some comments on Facebook from another veteran coffee person. Carrie Beavers is on here. Says SB is the enemy, and she goes, "That was a hillbilly roaster."
That is absolutely right. I was straight up hillbilly, and Frank's watching too. What's up, Frank? But yeah, so I didn't like any of the coffee, and even the coffee I was making, I still didn't like it. Like something's not there, and so I just kept doing that till I got it to a point where I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. It was better than what I was getting anywhere else. And so about that time, I'd already been with the NSA for like 10 years. I worked for a private company, but our customer was the NSA. And we went to work at the NSA facility every day. And that, it was just not a great place, for me. I didn't want to be there anymore. I was done. So my wife and I started praying about a way for me to get out of there. And by this time, I'm roasting on that thing every day almost, because it's only does 4 ounces.
Yeah, you get pretty repetitive over and over again.
And so I was talking to, yes, Carrie. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a welder, and he said, "Why don't you just make a bigger basket?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
of course, it makes sense. It's logical."
Yeah, so I went to a place here that I've always bought my stainless and aluminum and brass and things like that, all your non-ferrous stuff. I went there and I told them what I needed, and they handed it over. And I still to this day don't weld stainless very well, so I took it back to my buddy who's got a TIG and all that, and we welded up this 6-pound basket, and that's when things really started getting interesting, because I was in a group. I think Carrie's in it also, and some of our other friends, but it's called Coffee. And I think there's almost 200,000 members in that group. It's huge, all over the world. And I posted on there, I'm having trouble roasting, and does anybody roast over open flame? And I got, one guy was credible. He's like, "Hey man, I'll tell you, first off, you need to, be rotating at 60. You need to put propane burner, because you're not going to get everything you want out of smoke. You can't control it and all that." And so, I started doing all these things, and I've got this huge smoker pit that I built for a guy. It ended up being too big for him, and I bought it back from him. And so it's 36-inch casing, 36-inch diameter pipe, and it's an offset, true Texas smoker pit. It's offset, 2-foot firebox, 3-foot cooking area, and it's 3 feet deep. And so again, I bought this special motor for it, and I welded all this stuff to it's my computer. It's getting all these stupid, come on. And so I need to turn notifications off. Let's see, how do I do that? Excuse me. Um, and so anyway, uh, I got some information. I bought this motor from a place in Minnesota. It was not cheap. It was probably, I think I've ended up spending about $700 to get this new rig running. And I'm still not selling coffee at this point, right? I'm just spending money. And so I got everything set up. Again, a couple of failures, got the propane working right, built a fire in the firebox, drafted the smoke across the beans, and now I had something. And so that was
Now you're cooking with fire, right?
yeah, now I was literally cooking with fire. And so that is what literally launched. It didn't launch the business right away because I still didn't have a business. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But we used to have a men's group that we would get together weekly or every other week and do a Bible study. And one of the guys or two of the guys would come to the house all the time. And so we were at the house one weekend because I needed some help doing some woodworking because I am not a wood butcher. I do not do wood butchery. I'm a steel
I
guy.
do that. I do a metal guy.
Yeah, yeah. And so my friend Robert, he does wood butchery. And he came over and he fixed the deals we're working on. And we're sitting there drinking coffee that I made. And he's like, this is not just a coffee, but this is a ministry and a business all wrapped up in one. I said, how do you mean? He's like, well, every time we get together, we talk about God while we're drinking coffee. Okay. So there's a ministry opportunity there. If you have this coffee that tastes like nothing I've ever had, and you get people drawn in for the coffee, then you get to have a ministry. And then if you wanted to, you could make it a business where you sold coffee. And I was like, hey, that's a crazy idea.
It's amazing how the entrepreneurship journey can like just start in something. I was just thinking like, I had some questions for you, like to kind of lead some conversation because I know your podcast is pretty unscripted. I like to have some questions. You just totally like bypassed all the questions. You went right through the journey, and I'm sitting here thinking like, that's like perfect because entrepreneurship is something I wanted it to kind of pull out of this in your journey, and you just walk through the whole darn thing of like the ups and the downs, and you just go from one little step to the next. You fix that problem, and it's on to the next one. And then every now and then something smacks you in your head, and you're like, I don't know why I didn't think about that. Like, now you've got something.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we've got coffee and people like it. I'm sharing it with my friends, like giving it away all the time. It was the Money Pit, man. Just like that movie, The Money Pit back from the 80s. And
It's a good film.
pouring money in it, and every time I pour money, something else breaks, And so I
It's
was
also
doing
part of
all
the
this.
journey.
Yeah, everything's going great. We're praying for a way for me to get out of this situation that I'm in at work. I'm not happy there anymore. And my company, the company I work for, COPT, best company I've ever worked for. I tell everybody they're the goose that laid the golden egg. Incredible people, incredible company. They cared about the employees, but it was our customer that just, like any other huge bureaucratic agency, government agency, it's not a great place to, somebody's always trying to
I'm
stab
so
you.
surprised by that.
Right?
Gee, I'm so
Shocking.
surprised. Shocked. I'm just
Yeah.
taking it back right now. I can't believe it.
So I was working night shift at the time, and I was doing things like fasting before I prayed. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I wanted God to show me a way to get out of this place. And I came home from work one morning, after a long night shift, and I had a message on my messenger request, and it looked like you get those scams all the time, but it was two little boys, or it was Ashley and his son, or might have been both his boys. I don't know. It's just unusual. And so I'm fixing to go to bed. I'm half out of it anyway. And I went ahead and, just accepted the request. And 5 minutes later, I get a message, hello from Honduras. And I'm like, what? And so I'm going to cut that I'm going to condense that part of it because it's very important, but it's just for time's sake. Ashley owns a coffee farm in Honduras, and he's a Christian, and they went down there on ministry. when they bought their first piece of property that consequently had an old mill on it, which is how they got into the coffee business. And so he told me at some point we had conversations for a year. He helped me dial in my smoker barbecue pit, coffee roaster. And he doesn't even know nothing about him, but he knew enough about coffee and what the beans were supposed to do to help me figure out what I was doing on mine to stop burning coffee and stuff like that. And so anyway, at some point he tells me, if I believed in divine appointments. And I'm like, dude, I've been praying for divine appointments for months. He goes, because I feel like I'm being led to help you get your business off the ground and get to a point where you're successful. And whatever that takes, we're going to help you. And I was just like, I was floored, man. I mean, that's a God thing. That had nothing to do with me. And, how was I going to pick that guy out of, 200,000 people and say, hey, come help me out with my coffee business?
Weird things happen, man. There's just somebody, whether you're really or not, weird things could just happen sometimes that just don't have any explanation. Just what Brian Gibson just said, just like, his organization was blessed with their facility, Fob Rush. Like, weird things just can hit you sometimes from out of nowhere. And you just got to roll with it, man, to take the blessing.
All you have to do is be obedient. That's my lesson that I had to learn. If I'll just be obedient to God's will, he'll bless my socks off, and I don't have to understand how it's happening. I do have to be smart enough to understand this is not of me. This is not of the world. This is what God's doing in my life.
And when he smacks you upside the head with that opportunity, you run with it.
Yes, you run with it. And so shortly after I met Justin Charpentier, Carrie and I were both on the flagship mastermind group that he did. We're both founding members of his group. And of course, he's a digital marketeer, right? He does marketing. And so I think we had placed an order for our roaster in February of this last year. Excuse me. It's been almost a year now that Justin and I we had the class. I think it was last March that we did Justin's class the very first time. And that's when I started learning, because I've done 3 businesses before. Okay. I did 3 welding businesses. The first time I opened my welding business, I didn't know anything about welding and I didn't know anything about business. Failed miserably, 6 months. The second time, I knew a little bit about welding, still didn't know anything about business. I lasted a year that time. The third time, I was almost a master welder. Still didn't, I knew a little bit about business, but not enough. And when 9/11 hit, because I didn't know anything about business, I didn't have any way to protect myself. And so when 9/11 hit, I had contracts with like 8 parent companies of apartment complex chains in San Antonio. So I had about 18, maybe 16 or 18 apartment complexes that I would maintain. I would do stair-step replacements. I would fix their pool enclosures because Texas passed a law about, how wide the gap could be. And so I had all this work going. 9/11 hit and they're like, hey, listen, do you have umbrella insurance? Do you have auto liability? Do you have, general liability? Do you have all these things? These guys that are working, do they have? It was all stuff from the Patriot Act, and the only thing I had in place was my bank at the time was Patriot Act compliant. They were already there before they were even required to be there. And so that's the only thing I had lined up, and I didn't know enough about business or anything. And so I found the program called Boots to Business through the VA. And I took that, and that's pretty cool. You take live classes from Cornell. Well, they're recorded classes, but you take classes from Cornell, business classes, and that kind of gets you along the way. And then they when you graduate from that, or when you finish that, you complete that portion, they turn you on to the local, they call a VBOX, they're Veteran Business Centers. And I did that, but the nearest one was like, 3 hours from here. For me to have
which is like, a short drive in Texas.
Right? It's just right around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, it's just right around the corner. And so I didn't want to, I didn't want to mess with that. And so I enrolled at Wayland Baptist because it fed right into where I was at. After Dad died in 2016, I surrendered my life completely. God kept doing all these wonderful things in my life. And I got to go back to school to Wayland Baptist using my Chapter 31. I didn't even know I qualified for Chapter 31 vocational rehab. And so I was taking business classes and I was taking ministry classes. And that's when I was taking Justin's class. And in February, we took possession of our machine in March, I think, this last March or no, May, maybe somewhere around there. About this time last year, we took possession of our machine that we custom ordered from a place in Oklahoma. And COVID hit right and shut the whole country down in February, and it literally created my business for me. But I wasn't quite ready yet for the business part, but that's where Justin's class came in. And so, and then I joined the Warrior Council, and all the stuff that comes out of those meetings.
Oh,
It's so much guidance,
incredible.
and networking. And I was able to, I left school because what Justin was teaching, I was getting 2 weeks later from school. So he was always way ahead of him. And, like if you caught my podcast this last week with Steve, they're giving tangible assets in their book away,
Oh yeah, I did catch that. And I as somebody who's in school right now pursuing a business management degree, Unleash Your Humble Alpha. It's actually on my website now as on my reading list. But there's the academic way. I mean, that's the way the colleges teach it. Here's what you need to know, definitions, academic way of doing things. And someone who's been in business like myself for 8 years as a realtor, sometimes I sit through that and I'm like, oh, this is stupid. I negotiate for a living. By example, I'm taking a negotiation class. 25 people in the class, first day, a couple months ago. Who's got negotiation experience? Everybody in the class says they have negotiation experience negotiating with their younger siblings because they're all 18 to 22 years old. I'm like, well, I've been a realtor for 8 years. I negotiate for a living. And I'm just like lost. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. I mean, I negotiate. I mean, it's what I do, but now you're throwing these terms and this verbiage out here and all this crap. And it's like, I thought I was going to, I'm doing okay in class, don't get me wrong, but it's like, oh, this is just difficult to wrap your head around because it's the academic version.
Yeah. It's
not the practical, how you actually roll up your sleeves and do it.
Yeah. And so I left school because I realized shortly after joining the Warrior Council that, school's great, but the tangible stuff that I need, because I'm already operating, because people were at home now all of a sudden, right? They were forced to be at home. And guess what? All those coffee fanatics like myself were buying coffee online. And so it literally blew my business up overnight. But I was still trailing as far as what to do on the business side. And so, again, I pray for people, man, and God puts them in front of me as long as I keep doing, and I know everybody's ever heard my podcast. The first thing I do when I start my podcast is I thank God for everything that he's done in my life and my business. And he just keeps doing it, I mean, we're, and this is not boasting or anything like that, but we told Ashley's been telling us for 6 months that we were going to go to Honduras in May. And I was like, Ashley, I'm leaving my job in February. It's another thing I've done. I left my job. I said, we're not going to have money for that. I said, but I will tell you this, if God makes a way, we'll go, because God makes ways all the time. And so there was some money that left over from my job that I was not expecting that I received. And I'm like, oh, and then one of our dogs needed a surgery and they quoted us. And it was almost like, I was like, well, okay, well, there's all that money. It's gone. And so we went and I took the dog in the other day for the surgery, and he came out and they charged us like $150. And it was supposed to be like an $800 surgery. And I was like,
something right here.
I was like,
this is not what you quoted.
we have 7 dogs and we had 3 horses. And so Doc's been out to our house, he makes house calls. he jokes around all the time that we're responsible for the new wing that they're going to put in because we have so many dogs, animals, and we take them in all the time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes he does that. Sometimes he just charges for what he has to. And I'm sure they give us a break on it, even though I don't think they'll ever admit to it. But all of a sudden, I was like, hey, we have the money, because it's not horribly expensive to get down to Honduras. And I was like, hey, we can go. And even Connie my wife even started saying, well, if God makes a way for it, we're going to go to Honduras in May. And so it started out with Ashley telling me that we were going to go, and me telling him, hey, we'll see. Till my wife saying, oh, we're going to Honduras in May. And then God made a way for it. And so, and then I just came home today too, and I was a tax guy. And, you know, I thought we were going to be upside down big time, but you know, God just has a way of making everything work out. And
Crazy stuff happens.
He does, you know, and you know, we tithe every bag of coffee that we sell. You know, I've had people that are friends of mine that are business owners say, well, you can't start giving money to the church, you know, because you're just getting started. And I'm like, the Bible says to give of your first, not your whatever you got left. And so that's just how we carry ourselves. We put God first, and before the business, before the financials, before the mechanics of it, before the coffee beans. God comes first. We're going to glorify his name in everything we do. We're going to give him what's his first, not from whatever's left. And I can tell you that I've never had a month where I got scared and said, sweetheart, I don't know how we're going to make it this month, because God, and sometimes sometimes I'll get 40 orders in a week. I never get 40 orders in a week. Just boom, all of a sudden I'm like, I keep praying for it. It keeps happening. So, you know, it's hard to deny what he's doing. And really what I'm doing, being obedient, is I'm sharing the gospel. That's what we're supposed to do. I'm sharing God's message. I'm sharing his word and his message of love. And the vehicle that I'm using to get back and forth happens to be something that I absolutely love, which is coffee.
And you've done it in a very creative way too, like on your packaging. Because when I bought some, you got sample packs. I bought, I think, four sets of sample packs or something like that. Because my initial thought was, A, I want to try it. But B, how can I not support this mission? First of all, it's a small business. Second of all, it's a veteran-owned small business. It supports a family in Honduras. And, you know, you're spreading a message with it. Like, how can you, and it's mesquite coffee. You know, that's icing on the cake, right? Like, you got to try this. And so I got like 4 sets of your sample pack, man. And I was just handing them out left and right. Yep, here's some to my mom. Here's some to my sister. Here's my stepbrother and his wife, you know. And I'm like, man, everybody go try this. Like, you got to try it. Let me know what you think, you know.
Yeah.
This is a friend of mine down in Texas. He's eating this stuff. Like, you know, give this a try. Throw this in your coffee maker instead of that stuff that starts with an F or that stuff.
It's just been amazing, man. You know, and then the other day, you know, Steve and Lane, they went down to Peru and they did their yearly download, and they came up with HAV, right? Humble Alpha Veteran Empowerment.
Dude, you walk right into things, man. I was gonna bring that up and try and surprise you, man, because I thought that was powerful when they came up with that. I'm like, man, Humble Alpha Veteran Empowerment. You showed the book earlier. People need to get that book.
They do.
It's incredible. I got it on Audible, and I just sat here, you know, like 2 nights, something like that, 2.5 nights, just sat and listened to a little bit, picked it up the next night, and you're done. And it's something that you have to go through like 2 or 3 times. You got to go through it once and then kind of go back through it. But their whole idea.
You got to do the work too at the end of the section.
Exactly. You know? That's why I say I think you have to go through it once.
Yeah.
And let it soak in a little bit, and then you have to kind of go back and digest it in chunks and work on it. But they came back with that Humble Alpha Veteran Empowerment.
Yeah.
And then our friend Joe came up with something that I think is amazing, and I can't wait to see what the second one and the third one and the fourth one are. But I'll let you go ahead and tell what Joe came up with for you.
so tomorrow, actually, I've got a guy from Temple coming. He's coming on Friday because he can't come on Saturday. And I've got JD Tierney from South Paul, the hat that I'm wearing, the pray hat.
Shameless
And
plug for another business, right?
Yeah.
Mine's out of reach right now.
And so Brian Gibson, I will contact you, brother. JD's coming up here. Joe's coming down tomorrow. Kennedy Page, who just redid my logo. He's all veteran entrepreneurs.
Now he's a good guy. He did one for me for my real estate stuff.
Yeah.
Shameless plug for that one too. But it's Mission 309 where I'm talking to people in my local area about the nonprofits and the missions that they're going on to do things in the local community. He did a smash up job. It's amazing.
He called it. Joe deemed it, and we asked. We talked to Stephen Lane before we just do it all out there, but he called it Have Mission 1.0, and the mission was to come down here to get a bunch of guys from the council, from the tribe, to come down here and help me finish my shop, because I've been struggling with it, trying to do it by myself. And so we've got people coming from Dallas, Temple, Houston, Corpus, San Antonio, someplace else, I forget where, all going to come down here on Saturday, and we're going to wipe this thing out in one day. And then we're going to fellowship and network and see how we can help one another's businesses. And I know that this is just a first off the cuff thing. And Steve has given Joe and myself a pat on the back about it. And that's awesome. I know it's going to be more structured as this thing evolves, as they get, Steve and Lane get more involved in it. I'm sure that the missions will be a little more pointed, but what a great concept. Get a bunch of veterans together, because we're always helping people. People don't know that we're veterans, but we're always helping people. Most of us have that servitude, that service mindset where we want to serve our community.
And a lot of us, I think it's a behind the scenes kind of thing. We don't want a whole lot of press about exactly what we're doing. We just want to help. We gotta serve our fellow brothers and sisters,
Yeah, but now, and I'm not saying that we don't need help. We do. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem asking for help. Some people do, but this is veterans helping veterans. I mean, I got a group of veterans coming to my house from all over the state, to help me with something that's very personal, my business.
In an extremely tangible way. It's not like they're giving you advice or saying, "Hey, try this, try this system, or try this, or try that." Like, you guys are
got your hands.
You're building walls, running electricity, insulation, stuff like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so it's still like, I just don't, it's hard for me to fathom it sometimes, and Joe and I are in contact almost daily, and we're talking about it daily. And it's just like, wow, man, I just can't believe this is actually going to happen, And so
there better be some pictures.
Yeah, there's going to
be pictures, or it didn't happen, right?
He's bringing his whole roadcaster with him. And so we're probably going to do some lives throughout the day while we're working. And of course, hopefully towards the end of the day, when we're hopefully be close to being done. But yeah, it's going to be, it's incredible. I mean, I just don't know, it's really hard to do something when you're not, like, I have a grandfather who was in business. He was a genius. He was completely illiterate. He couldn't read or write a word of English or Spanish. He came here illegally. He got his paperwork, and he was so excited about being a citizen and paying taxes. Those were things he was very proud of. And it's not like today where you have all this mentality where they just come and don't pay, and they don't want to assimilate to our culture, and they want to get here. So I have issue with that. But because my grandfather came here and he realized what was important, and he did what he had to do to become a citizen. But the gap between him and me, was so big that I really didn't really didn't get to draw any experience from him, business experience. And so I don't know where it came from. And, if you listen to what Steve talks about, he was kind of a weakling kid when it came to sports, and he was always in trouble and he was terrible.
I resonated with some of that, mostly the
Yeah,
terrible at sports part. That was me
yeah.
too.
But you have to set your intention, right? And once you set your intention, then then you follow it up with imperfect action. And so leaving my job was kind of crazy, but it had to be done when it was done.
That's
Because
a
I've already
tough
set the
step to take.
intention that this business is going to be successful. And so, uh, I, it's overwhelming, to be quite honest with you. It's actually overwhelming, but
I'm
uh,
excited just to know what was going on
yeah,
and know that the guys are just rallying around you and helping you out. Because I told you before we started recording, I'm like, dude, if I was any closer, I'd be down there. But we're
yeah,
talking like an 18-hour trip to make it down there. That's
yeah,
that's not in the cards, especially with appointments. But it's like I am excited about 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever those look
absolutely,
like. And
absolutely.
when there's something in my neck of the woods, whoever it's benefiting, you betcha I'm going to try and be there.
Dude, I
One way,
want to
shape, or
see them
form,
all
however
over
I
the
can.
country, man. I want to see those things all over the country, and I'm looking forward to seeing Lane, at in person, and Steve in person at some of these things as they grow. And so, because they are really, they're like business mentors for us. And so,
Huge,
yeah. And like
business
Justin,
mentors. Yeah.
I had a conversation with Justin today. He's like, man, he just got back from vacation, and he's like, man, I wish, the circumstances were different, because I'd probably jump on a plane and get down there too. But, he's a personal mentor that really before I had the council, I was with Justin in his group, and he's still a huge resource. I can call Justin anytime I want, you know, and he's a like-minded individual, he'd be Christ first. And so he just, it's just been blessing after blessing after blessing. It just goes to show you that if you'll just submit to God's will and be obedient to him, there is absolutely nothing that he won't do in your life. Because all the things that I've done that have lined up on the business side, with the exception of some good decisions that I've made financially, I could not have done. I don't have those kinds of resources. I don't have those kinds of contact lists. I don't have that kind of, I've never had that kind of entrepreneurial background or tutelage. I never had somebody, hey, do this, do that. So all those things have just completely been God. And the beautiful thing is that the vehicle to get on his mission to do his work is something that I am absolutely passionate about. And that's great coffee. In fact, it's the best coffee this side of heaven.
That's man, that's key. Like it's kind of the key to happiness, the key to finding your path in this life, man, is find something that makes you happy, that you have a passion to do every single day, and you can just get up and do it.
Yep.
And it's sometimes that can take different forms. I've got two passions myself. One of them is real estate. I love it. Been doing it for 8 years. My mother's my business. Somewhere over 40 years combined experience. I grew up around it. I love it. I love helping people in their personal property, and buying and protecting their assets and building wealth. I also love giving back to veterans. Podcast. We're both kind of doing that same thing, like finding a way to give back and add value and help people protect. And like, it's incredibly powerful to be able to wake up every day and do that. Like wake up and get excited. Today's going to be a good day. It's another episode. Or, I did that today. Like, man, it's going to be awesome. I had a pre-show interview earlier today. Man, it was awesome. I was so excited to see it. There's two things on my calendar. I'm like excited to talk to this person, and I'm excited to talk to Jose again and hear more of that story, how the coffee came out and the entrepreneur journey, because we're still in it.
Yeah, we are, man. It's evolving daily.
Well, it evolves weekly, right?
Yeah.
You got the Warrior Council meetings. For those people that don't know, that might be watching or may watch in the future or listen, on Facebook, there is a group called the Entrepreneur Tribe. There's, what are you thinking is in there, Jose? 15, 16,000 people somewhere in there?
it's over 15,000 now.
I know it's over 15. I don't know if it's cracked 16 or not, but
I think it's still under there, but yeah, it's
Uh,
somewhere in there, 15
yep.
and change.
And Lane Balone and Stephen Kuhn run that. They took that over, I think, about a year or so ago, and they created the Warrior Council, which is more of a mastermind accountability type group.
Yes.
And that's, we all pay to be in that group. There's, I think, almost 100 in there, and we meet every Thursday morning, and we talk about our business and what our challenges are. What do we need? What are we looking for? It's hard to say what comes on that Facebook group. Just in the Facebook group, the questions people are reaching out for and the free value that we're adding to each other. I was helping, I had a couple of points that I messaged somebody on there the other day that I don't know anything about their business. I'm not even remotely close to the same kind of business, but a program that I was aware of, I felt like might be a fit for them. It might be adaptable for them. And that's the beauty that I get out of it. And I think everybody else does is like, you never know where that message or which one of the group that's going to come from. It's going to give you that spark or that inspiration or that idea that makes your business better. I know me and you both benefited as podcasters from Travis Johnson and his podcast guide. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I can't give enough shout outs to Travis.
Yeah, I know. He really does. And then now he's got the Veteran Podcast Network that has us all listed on there. I think, did you already jump on that?
Yep, I'm in there.
Yeah. So I think he said he's got 15 people on it already.
It grew pretty fast. We actually did that in the Warrior Council. He pulled it up and started building the framework for Tammy Moses and her Hoarding Solutions podcast and mine, because we both happen to be in that chat. So he kind of built that in our little squad meeting after the main meeting on Thursday, and he built that out. And since then, he's got, like you said, about 15, 16 or so veteran podcasts in there, which is incredible.
Yeah, I'm going to go through there and start clicking on all of them so I can get on all of the podcasts too.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've got a podcast, and obviously everybody should know that now. God Country Coffee Podcast, and go ahead and say a little bit about what you're trying to do with yours.
Yeah, so
the God, and all that.
The God Country Coffee Podcast every Friday night, 1900 Central Standard Time, and we talk about anything God, country, or coffee. And so far, I've only had one civilian, and that's my coffee supplier.
It's a good first person to have there, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's not because I'm trying to. I mean, I've put this out everywhere, but everybody who signs up for it has been military, and they've got these great, incredible stories. And when I do my pre-interview, I don't ask you about your faith. I just, hey, listen, this is what I do. This is what I personally do before I start. I don't script it. We'll start out with how you got into the military, where you were born, where you were raised, how you got to the military, and then what you did after that. Then we're going to focus on your business. Let's plug your business. That's what it's all about. And I can't tell you how many episodes since I started have had somebody who, we didn't discuss it, right? Because I don't discuss that beforehand, who've had this great work in their life that God did. And so the podcast it's twofold. One, I'm always going to share awesome stories about what God's doing right now, because we serve a true living God, right? Our God's not dead. And so I always want to push that. The other thing is that I want to support our community. Obviously, I'm a little slanted because I want to support the veteran community first. But, there's people who, they feed the homeless. There's people who, they clothe the homeless. There's people who find jobs for people. And my niche is, I want to help veterans, especially those who are in crisis, and the way to do it is you have conversations about it. And so that's what we do on the podcast. And I generally keep it at give praise and glory to God. Tell me about you. Tell me about your business. And how can we help you? How can we support your business? And so I try to stick to those guidelines. Are broad. Those are very broad, but, we try to stick to that as best as I can. And you've been on the show. I ask people for their websites and all their social media stuff so that I can post it while we're talking. And I do the same thing you do. I put it a couple of days ahead of time on the tribe and on my Facebook page and on my personal page. and I go
Always
live.
learning from each other. You know, we
Yeah,
gotta push. Iron sharpens iron, right?
that's
Push each
exactly
other. We've had a lot of the same guests too, you know, which is amazing because they're slightly different angles,
yeah,
you know, and it's interesting to see that.
absolutely.
But the
Yeah,
same message, right?
yeah, yeah. I love it, and you know, like I said, I don't bring up, um, I don't intentionally in an interview bring up, hey, tell me about your relationship with God, because uh, my relationship with God is between me and Him. My story, what God's done in my life, is something that I should be sharing with other people, which is what I'm doing. And that's the reason why I don't. And I'll ask somebody ahead of time, is there anything that you don't want me to talk about? You know, and is there anything you do? And I had one lady tell me, I don't really want to talk about my faith because I'm very uncomfortable with it. I mean, I'm comfortable with my relationship, but I'm uncomfortable talking about it. She ended up getting on the show and talking about how God did this incredible work, you know, in her life when she was when the baby had stopped, heartbeat stopped in her, while the baby was in her, and they thought it was dead. And she heard somebody's voice, and then the lady said, there's not been a man in here, ma'am. This, it's just us, the two nurses and the doctor. She's a lady. And so, you know, it God's got a way of getting, somebody needed to hear her story that night, and she felt compelled to tell it, and she did. I didn't prompt her, I didn't push her to say it. In fact, I told her, you're more than welcome. If you don't want me to talk about it, I won't even bring it up.
Yeah, some conversations are tough. Like, you know, do
Yeah,
you go there? Does this go off the rails?
yeah,
You know, does this get too emotional? Does it get too raw? Or is it, is it the right calling? Is it the right time? Because somebody out there is going to hear it one of these days
yeah.
and it's going to help them in their situation.
You know as well as I do, being in the driver's seat, it's a lot different when you're on the other side, like I am today. I got
It is. It definitely is.
I got called on to the a TVO Campfire, which is a TV show that airs on streamed services like Apple TV and Google TV and all that. And I'm not gonna lie, man, there's like 3 points in that during that interview where the questions that lady was asking me and the guy was asking me, I got emotional, man. I mean, I had to like stop and get water, and it was bad. But yeah, you just never know,
That
and
makes the best program,
it
when
does.
you hit that point, somebody can talk about something that's super relatable, where it just gets really, really deep,
Yeah,
and it can help somebody.
yeah. Everybody's got a story, right? And if God's done something in your life, it's your duty to tell people about what He's done. I mean, that's part of what the Bible says that when you surrender your life to Christ, you're commissioned to share the gospel. And how do you do that? Well, I'm going to tell you what God's done in my life. I'm not going to preach to you and tell you, hey, listen, you should stop doing this. I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you, hey, let me tell you what He's done for me, because I was headed the wrong way. I was going to end up in a bar ditch somewhere in a cardboard box. So
At least you had the opportunity or the vision to kind of notice that things were kind of falling in line for you. And I think that's a valuable lesson, because I want on my podcast here for there to be some sort of a lesson with every guest that comes on. And I guess that's really the deep lesson that just kind of hit me. I knew there's a lot of directions you're going to go: God, coffee, entrepreneurship, and then the whole journey. But really, if somebody's struggling out there, whatever it is, it could be substance abuse or PTSD or financial, or just like not really knowing what's going on, like looking for that next thing or some just general guidance, whatever it is. Keep an eye out for those opportunities, because you never know when that opportunity is going to slap you in the back of the head and say, hey, dummy, wake up, open your eyes. There's an opportunity here. Maybe it's God if you believe it. Maybe it's just chance. Who knows? But be open to those opportunities. Open your eyes. Don't walk through the world. You joke about young millennials now with their cell phones walking down looking. Head up, eyes open. forward focused, have that right mentality, and be looking for that opportunity. Because it'll be there. It'll present itself one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether it's a divine intervention or not, or who knows, whatever you would believe, it's going to be there eventually.
I'm also a firm believer that God doesn't expect for us to sit around, on a bar stool or on a bump on a log or whatever, waiting for him to do something. I need to get this tree cut down, so I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to sit here and wait till God strikes it with lightning. That's not what God wants us to do. We're supposed to get up off our tails and do and move. I strongly believe that that's what we're supposed to do. And you just keep moving until you hit a brick wall. And then when you hit that wall, for me personally, that's God saying, you need to go a little bit more to the left, or you need to go to the right. If you don't believe in that, that's fine. But that brick wall tells you what? Well, I got to change directions.
You're going to hit that brick wall one way or another, whether you believe or not.
Right. Yeah. Whether you're a believer or not, you're going to hit that wall. So in order to avoid that wall, you either have to go this way or you got to go that way. And so whether you're a believer like I am or you're not, sitting around waiting for something to happen is not going to get you anywhere. You're going to stay right where you're at, and so you absolutely, I love that word, imperfect action. You have to take imperfect action. And sometimes the first part of that is just moving. Get moving in the direction. So, and
yeah, you got to go do something.
In the veteran community, you're never alone. There's always a brother or a sister right around the corner that will lend an ear, that will lend a hand, that will give you a word of advice, or sometimes just listen to you, just hear what you have to say. And so if you're out there listening and you think that there's no, alternative, there is. There's always a brother or sister. And even if it's not the ones that are in your circle, maybe your buddies are tired of you, they don't want to hear you, but there's somebody else who will listen to you. And so you're absolutely never alone.
Yep, that there definitely is. And you need to realize when you hit that brick wall, you may be looking forward and hit that brick wall, whether it's business, life, whatever. You hit that wall, you probably saw the wall coming. You should have seen the wall coming, but you hit it. But what you don't see, because you're maybe looking forward or looking side to side, is you have your brothers and sisters behind your back.
That's right.
And maybe you just need to turn around and say, hey bro, hey sis, what do you think I should do here? Can you give me a hand? Should I go left? Should I go right? Should I go over it? Should I dig a hole and go under it? What do I got to do here? Give me the piece of advice so I can get around this obstacle and go on to the next one. And because you know what? Maybe they're with you. Maybe they get ahead of you. And they turn around someday and say, hey, look, I need some help. What do you think? Should I go left, right, over, or under? You never know. Everything works in mysterious ways. But that was awesome, Jose. But I do have 3 final questions for you.
Okay.
I hope you're prepared for these, because I ask everybody the same 3 questions. Well, I should say all my guests so far have been vets. I do have a couple of civilians coming up. I don't know what I'm going to do for them yet, to be honest. But all my vets, I have 3 questions. First one, what advice do you have for somebody who's looking to transition out of the military today?
First thing I would do is if join the Vetpreneur Tribe, join the Warrior Council, get plugged in to be around people that are already doing what you want to do. Because that's how you're going to learn. If you want to sell cars, don't hang around real estate agents, because they're not going to tell you how to sell cars, and vice versa. If you want to sell houses, you want to be real estate, hang around with you. Don't hang around with car salesmen.
Yeah, don't hang around with car dealers. No.
Yeah, it's as far as that goes, definitely. And don't wait till you get out. Don't wait till, hey, I'm going to wait till I'm done with this before I start. Don't, man, look way out ahead. Look at the big picture and prepare yourself. 5 P's, man. Every branch of service learns the 5 P's, right? They say 6, but let's just say 5 for children watching. Perfect planning, or proper planning, prevents poor performance.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
So what advice would you have for somebody, the second question here, somebody looking to join the military today? What advice would you have for them?
Man, I would join and stay in for 20, honestly. Doesn't matter what branch you join. The work ethic that you will develop, the camaraderie that you will develop, the friendships that you'll forge will be there for the rest of your life. I went from making $11.75 an hour to a job where I made almost $36 an hour because of my military experience. Not because I had something specific to what I was doing there, because I was in the military and the guys that were hiring were full birds, and they're like, well, they have an understanding of what your work ethic is. And, and they if they've made 06, they can weed out the nipple you're there to.
They can smell the bullshit by then.
Yeah, like they can smell the crap.
They can see it coming.
Yeah, so that would definitely be my advice for that.
All right, and the final question here: what organization or organizations, see if you throw me a curveball here or not, would you like to give a shout out to that you think are doing amazing things for the veteran community?
Oh my, Veteran Network .club is the website. DP. He's got the largest veterans group on Clubhouse, which right now is only on iPhone, but it's going to be on Android soon. They're doing such relevant work, man, in all the spaces. I would say Doc Jocelyn's podcast, Bullets to Beans. He hits a lot of hard veteran issues from somebody who's suffered severely with PTSD. Brian's Project 22, was it Project Die Hard?
Die Hard, yep.
What an amazing mission that he has. I mean, he's literally taking people off the street, man. I mean,
it's groundbreaking in so many ways.
It's just I just never thought anybody, but he's a believer, and he's doing amazing work for his brothers and sisters.
I could go on and on about his what he's doing, but I literally recorded an episode with him a few weeks ago. So, anybody listening, you need to go back and listen to that one and hear what he's going on for our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. I would say there's so many, that's a hard question. That's probably the hardest question of the whole thing, because, you want to list all these people that, that are just doing amazing work in the veteran space. And it's hard to nail them all, but, I think Doc's conversation weekly with veterans in crisis, people who have survived crisis, Brian's outfit, they need help. They need financial help. They need supporters. They need, stuff to make that mission. That's an really important mission, and then anything in the Veterans Network, if you go on their site and you buy a pair of socks, DP gives a pair of socks to a homeless veteran. If you buy a hoodie, he gives a hoodie to a homeless veteran. If you buy, whatever you do, he donates that to, and then he's bringing all these people on his show that are impacting the veteran community in a way like in no other time in our history. In no other time in our history are people doing what people are doing, what Brian's doing, what DP's doing, what some of us are doing with our podcast. Nobody in the history of veterans, I don't think has ever been so highly motivated to help our veteran community out. And
got an opportunity to scream it from the mountaintops, right?
I don't think you have to look very far, man, to find incredible missions to support.
Yeah, there's no shortage, that's for sure. And that's why I have those three questions, because I think I am always surprised what the answer is, what direction somebody goes with it. Haven't heard anybody say any kind of piece of bad advice yet. Don't expect to either. But it's always interesting because it's a little bit of an insight into your, to your opinion, like how you feel about what is important. What's important to you when you get out. What do you think is important when somebody joins? And I do get a lot of DP and Veterans Network is a new one. I have not had anybody call that one out there in that answer yet, but it is awesome. And if you're on Clubhouse or you're on Android and you're going to get on Clubhouse, you need to check it out. There's a lot of conversations there. He does them there. He does them on YouTube.
Yeah, he every Friday night. after my show, after my podcast, I think he starts at 8 o'clock Central. They call it FNL, Friday Night Live, and he always has incredible guests that are doing incredible work in the veteran space.
And his, I think, is what at 8 Central or something.
Yeah, 8 Central.
And yours is 7, right?
Yep.
And then we're talking about Project Die Hard, and I know Brian's still listening, but he does an update at 5 every Friday on what's going on his thing. So seriously, listen, drop your regular Friday night plans.
Yeah.
Every single Friday night. And this might be a little weird for a podcast host to be saying this about other people, but the mission, the message, everything is important. My Friday nights get a little crazy. Sometimes I can tune in, sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
But I am almost to this point now where I've got that same routine. 5 o'clock, Brian's on. Try and catch it if I can. If not, if you go back and watch it to hear an update that he's got going on. And then I'm trying to catch yours, and I'm trying to listen to DP afterwards. And sometimes I might even stay up super late and see what's going on in Clubhouse after.
Yeah.
And just have those conversations, and it's amazing. You know, it replaces a little bit of Netflix time or some Hulu time, but the content is more near and dear, to my heart, and hear what people got going on, and it's inspiring. So
yeah, absolutely.
So cancel your regular Friday night plans and hop on Facebook and check those out one after another. Absolutely. You even got time in there for dinner because Brian does his at 5. So when he's done, you got a little bit of time to get some dinner.
Yeah, want some food down.
Settle down in with a drink or whatever your pick your poison for the night and sit back and relax.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. So once again, Jose, thanks for coming on here. For those who are watching, thirddaycoffeesequin.com is where you can get the coffee. This will be posted in the description too on YouTube. But thank you so much. I unfortunately will not be in the Warrior Council tomorrow. I've got a scheduling conflict, but I will be there next week. I know it's rare. I'm almost always there. I get that much value out of it. But say hi to everybody for me tomorrow. I appreciate you being on. Drop you in the back room here and kind of play my final little message here.
All right, man.
And we'll wrap it up. Once again, thanks. Appreciate it, Jose.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that is it, folks. Thanks for tuning into the episode today. We really appreciate you taking a listen or watch. Please remember, we have a website, www.battlebuddypodcast.net. We're always trying to add more resources there, so please go check it out. And if you have ideas for extra resources, please reach out to us and let us know what you think we can add to the website. Don't forget, you can listen to this podcast in places such as Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and many more. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on any of our social media channels. And finally, if you are feeling like you're at the end of your rope and you need some extra help, please reach out to a battle buddy, or you can call the National Suicide Hotline at 800-273-8255. No matter what you do, brothers and sisters, get the help you need, because we want you here tomorrow.